the vagina is self-lubricating. It is flexible. It has a lot of soft tissue. It is made for this. It's made to give birth. It's made to be fucked, and so on. The anus simply is not.
From Washington, Alt-Right Politics, America's most trusted Sunday news program. The sharpest minds, realist sources, the most hardline positions. Introducing Richard Spencer, president of the National Policy Institute. Don Camillo, bon vivant, dilettante. Did you like that because it rhymed?
I like that.
Yeah. I aspire to be a dilettante. And
It's
I'm
not
your
an easy-
host, Greg Conte. Don, do you eat oysters?
On occasion.
Do
I'm
you
not.
No, next question. Do you eat snails?
Yes, on
Okay, well,
occasion.
and obviously you're French. Just for the sake of the argument, no. They're gross, right?
No, actually, I like them both.
No, just say no.
Have you ever seen Spartacus?
Oh, okay. You know where this is going.
Yes.
Do you consider the eating of snails to be moral and the eating of oysters to be immoral?
Is there symbolism that I'm missing in this question?
Yes.
Yes, there is. It's all a matter of taste.
I'm out of my league here.
Sorry, this is I'm doing a routine from Spartacus where Laurence Olivier is asking, is it Tony Curtis, his boy slave, as they're in the bath together,
Yes.
and trying to broach the subject of gayness. And it was actually cut from the original edition of the film, and then
Greg,
found and reinserted later. Laurence Olivier was
reinserted
actually,
later.
Well, yeah, Laurence Olivier was actually dead when they redid the scene, and somebody, I forget who, but somebody like actually imitated his voice to like redo the audio because they'd lost the audio. But anyway, so today
I would answer your question, but our bathwater's too warm. Greg, we need to add a little more.
yeah, let's try to.
Yeah.
So today we're going to be discussing a very dangerous topic. We'll be discussing homosexuality. So let's get some of the obvious caveats out of the way before we get further into this. Richard, does it make us gay to even talk about this?
No. And
We're not repressed homos for obsessing
yeah, I mean,
over.
I'm glad we're actually talking about this. There is a kernel of truth to this idea that if you obsess about homosexuality, it seems to indicate that the lady doth protest too much. The various evangelical preachers who talk about fire and brimstone and talk about gays in every other sermon, if not every other sentence. End up getting into these scandals themselves where they're involved in meth and so on. So there's a kind of half truth to this idea that if you're a little too obsessed with this topic, it means that you have something to hide. But I don't think anyone's accusing us of this. We talk about a ton of things. Homosexuality is important. It's not the most important issue. But it's certainly one that we should talk about in depth, and I think also with a certain, disinterested objectivity. We can talk about this. It's a tricky subject. It makes us uncomfortable. I'm sure there'll be a lot of, laughter and sarcasm and nervousness and so on whenever you talk about something that's inherently uncomfortable. I think that's actually a very important aspect of this whole phenomenon, actually. But no, I think we should talk about it. It's a very serious issue. You can't think about contemporary politics or contemporary society without addressing the homo question.
It's funny. The conservative movement seems to want to do anything to get away from the homo question. Their line for the last decade, it seems like, has been, well, consenting adults should be able to. I don't really care about what happens in the bedroom. There are more important things to talk about. I think we should just let it go.
Right. If you are ultimately a liberal, then there is nothing to discuss. You have two consenting individuals. There are libertarian arguments. There's actually a libertarian in this room who's not on mic, but yes, there are libertarian. Just listening in, there are libertarian arguments for being able to sign a contract killer to yourself. Is that legal to willfully pay someone to kill you, or willfully pay someone to rape you to
Sounds
death,
like
or
very
something?
interesting entertainment.
Yeah, well, it's just
There was that German,
basically libertarian autism, taken to its limits.
Like, does the contract have
Can
a
you
clause
eat?
where it's like,
yeah, is
it's
it
like
illegal?
15 minutes from the moment I sign this, you can kill me.
Right.
Like, there's a like.
Well,
I
yeah.
get to
Is
run
it
away
is
and
it
then-
a violation of the non-aggression principle if you like slowly eat yourself, like you
There was
are
a
cutting
German-
off your own arm and consuming it, but like you're non-aggressive. Who? That's a victimless crime, right? Like this is again. I basically if your basis is the non-aggression principle and the individual, then yeah, you'll go down this road into total autism. But if you have a grounded, real conception of the human experience, which actually includes protecting people from bad things, stomping out bad things, even if that is even if you do aggress against them, then
conceiving of people as members of a group, and
Right.
you can't just forego
You are your brother's
duties
keeper.
to the group. I mean, it's like would you allow all women, or would you allow 10% of the female population to just kill themselves? I mean, that's obviously going to have maleffects in the sexual market and going to lead to increased social problems like crime among the males who have no mates. I mean, and this argument can be applied to a lot of things. Now,
Right.
obviously, we don't want to take it to its reductio ad absurdum and say, well, everybody is therefore a slave of the state. Or, I don't know, maybe we do, but
maybe we do.
Mussolini would have something to say about that. Couple things I'd say from the first couple minutes of listening to you guys. The first is just a lulzy observation. It has no real weight. There was a German who wanted to commit suicide by cannibalism, and had.
Oh, are you talking about Armin Meiwes?
I have no idea what his name is, and the fact that you know it so quickly is disturbing. If it is the right one.
Rammstein fan.
Yeah.
This dude paid someone to come over to his apartment.
Yeah.
And eat him slowly, and
Well, starting with a very strange place, but yeah, go on.
yeah, I mean that I have nothing to go on to. I think that was the that was
No,
his
Rammstein had a
self-
song about it. It was Mein Teil, das ist mein Teil.
Nice.
Denn du bist, was du isst, und ihr wisst, was es
Din
ist.
du bist? Is this like
No,
German?
then you are. You are what you
No.
eat, and you know what this
Yeah,
is.
yeah, I'm kidding. That's fine. So that was the first little tidbit. The second, Richard,
We'll do a drop.
Richard, so Greg obviously asked Richard about, whether or not we're gay for asking this question, and then Richard answered very intelligently that, obviously not. This is a very important topic. He used the word disinterestedly. He meant it in the sense, like, objectively, we stand away from this question. We can look at it objectively.
Right.
But there is one meaning of the word disinterested with which I don't agree. None of us in the alt-right can be disinterested, quote unquote,
You mean
from this question.
uninterested.
Because, uninterested, because it actually affects us whether or not we're gay or whether or not we want to broach the subject
Yeah.
in the alt-right or outside of the alt-right. We're part of, I think you guys broached the question of libertarianism and individualism versus the collective. Homosexuality is much more than just the individual choice from an ethical, moral, religious, whatever perspective. Is a public health hazard. It is an issue that has, just before we started recording, Greg intelligently suggested that we reread the Andrew Joyce article about, that three-parter that obviously launched 1,000 comments on the alt-right page.
Yeah.
And he, obviously goes
It was
on
from
and on about
September, I think.
Yeah.
That article came out.
right. And no, and he attacks the question from various angles. The public health one is one of them. The demographic, the dysgenic effect that it has on demography is another. So no, we can't be, even though Richard meant disinterested. He totally, that sentence was correct, and I agree with it. I'm just pulling that out of. I'm intentionally.
We're
pulling it out
talking
of
about this
context to say
because
that
it has
this is
effects.
right. It has such an important effect, regardless of whether or not you're prepared to discuss it. It has to be discussed.
Well,
Yes.
And then finally, the third and final comment I'd make is about your guys' comment on liberalism. In essence, something that the Anglosphere doesn't discuss too much. We now on the alt-right get it. We understand that what we are living in is the natural progression of economic liberalism leading to liberalism in mores, leading to basically a clusterfuck leading toward the end of civilization. In continental right-wing philosophy, we talk a lot about that filiation, the economic liberalism, which is too often in the post-1945 world identified with center-right politics, social democracy, Christian democracy. Oh, don't worry about it. We're all just, liberalizing the economy is a good way to, reboot the country. No, it is a leftism by definition. Anything that strays from state control, patriarchy, church and state, family unit, the military, when I say corporations, I mean organized units of
Business.
what do you call it, like chambers of commerce and stuff like that. Those were the building blocks of traditional European civilization, and economic liberalism sapped all of those institutions I just listed and led to the situation we're in today. So we have to correctly identify economic liberalism not as mud GOP conservatism. It is a radical leftism that has been normalized, just like homosexuality today is
Right,
being
and
normalized.
it goes to the reason that people have been, I think, gone along with the homosexual libertarian argument. Oh, we'll just let people do what they want to. It's not a problem for me. We should have more homo men because that means more girls for me. Yay. Like all these arguments is because the general public has forgotten and cannot articulate how societies are formed. And so your typical man on the street, the only people arguing against homosexuality are just seen as total like rubes.
Kooks.
Yeah. Backwood Hicksmen, if you'll accept the neologism. But your typical person can't explain why, society forms and as a small group of people like asserts itself. I mean, imagine a situation of anarchy or primitivism. You have 5 males and a couple females. Okay, well now you have to figure out who gets to sleep with the women. You have to find out how you're going to keep those males in the group, cohesive. If you have 2 of the guys decide to go off and just start fucking each other, well, what maleffects might occur here? And also, the other part of the problem is how does it, and this is something that people are reluctant to address, is how does behavior such as homosexuality or too much of an attraction to sex or too much indulgence in any vice, alcohol, video games,
hedonism of
how
all
is
stripes,
hedonism a problem? Yeah. And is it a problem for society or for the individual?
There's a reason why, in before, I'm quoting some sort of Talmudic Abrahamic religions here, but there's a reason why traditional Christianity, when understood in its non-Judaic understanding, had very, very clearly delineated cardinal sins that had to do with that kind of hedonism, gluttony and sloth and stuff like that. Because it does have maleffects, and a European man properly understanding his place in a European society knows instinctively that it's wrong to indulge. There is such a thing as too much of a good thing. Traditionally, Europeans, especially like the 3 of us in this room, are we have indulged in some good wines and good cigars and good women. That has its place because
Who hasn't indulged in self-cannibalism once in a while?
Once in a while.
I mean, actually, that is one thing you can only indulge in once. But
it depends on how much you decide to indulge. Right? Moderation in self-cannibalism means you have more to eat later
eat
on.
my left arm.
Yeah, I mean,
No,
then you go and apply for disability benefits from the government.
Right,
But
I just ate
LOL.
half my
to the
leg.
to the original point, when the Greeks, lauded moderation, that was, the golden mean, everything in moderation. That's something that is intrinsic to European civilization, and the hedonism that we've known in times of of great whatever the opposite of scarcity is. The word is
Plenty.
yes, of great plenty. Thank you. For example, the post 45 world is sick due to that, due to the fact that we're indulging.
Don,
in,
but wait. But heterosexuals can be just as indulgent in
Sure.
sex as
Definitely.
homos.
Definitely.
Wait, you're going to go along with that? Really?
No, I am, because that's actually one of the number one critiques that you get from an unthinking leftist when you go too hard against homos is, yeah, well, if you're some sort of like, practicing religious person, then you're not looking at the degeneracy inherent in sexually liberated heterosexual couples. Well, guess what? They're right.
That's right to an
agree
extent.
and amplify their point is, I'm not just hitting out against homos. There's also some severely out of whack heteros in
No, but
today's
here's the
society.
point.
Yes,
Here's the point I was getting
no.
at. There's no brakes on male homosexuality. There are brakes on male heterosexuality, and that is women.
Well, this gets it. What's Greg's saying is, even your average young man who goes and chases girls or something like that, even your average slut, you could say, is at least expressing something, maybe in a crude or immature way. They're at least expressing something that is natural,
healthy, normal drive
and
to
ultimately
reproduce.
Definitely. Of course.
productive. It just
Right.
needs to be channeled. And
Right.
also, look, I think I actually am skeptical of people who haven't sowed their wild oats a little bit. To be frank, if you haven't chased after women or gone out and got in a little drunk or something, I'm actually skeptical of you, because that is an even if I'm not, obviously I'm not.
Richard's channeling Plato today, huh?
Well, I'm as I do every week. Obviously these things can be vices. They can lead to personal destruction, even in their worst cases. But they are fundamentally a sign of robustness, and so it is different than homosexuality. I mean, even your average nice gay couple that who live together in some urban apartment.
Contradiction in terms.
What I'm saying is, on one level, these people aren't that offensive, but actually on a deeper level, they're in a way more offensive than your average, say, dude at a bar who's hitting on girls and
Right,
and
because
so on.
the difference between earlier I'd answered Greg in the affirmative, saying what I said earlier, but I see your point. In essence, it's a difference of nature and not of degree.
Right.
The problem with heterosexual couples sometimes or not just couples, but heterosexuals not acting as couples and just being hypergamous in their relations is just a dysfunction in degree, but not in nature. The nature is fine. It's
Right.
just they're going too far with it. Whereas what you're saying, and I completely 150%
homosexuality
agree
is
with you,
a dysfunction in
nature
degree,
is wrong. Yeah.
nature and degree, though, because
Right.
homosexuals
Right, but at the
have
root
on
of it,
average
just even
dozens more partners than heterosexuals.
What Richard is saying is even the quote-unquote settled gays
Yeah.
that live in apartments
Yeah,
in the
this,
Upper
this,
East Side.
this is a
Let's get
myth.
away-
That is a myth. Like
I know. That's
I
no
doubt
gays
that
are
even
like that.
exists.
No, I know, but I'm just saying to his point.
Even Andrew Sullivan, the ultimate conservative gay apologist, we just want to be normal, guys. Even he expressly says that there are no gays that are monogamous. I mean, it doesn't.
Right.
But anyway, let's actually.
Yeah, there's no gammy in homosexuality. Let's
Right.
also point that out. Gammy implies some kind of
Right.
reproduction.
Right.
They're, I don't know what the word is. They're
But let's actually
polyhomorous or
get
something,
let's get at this not from a moral and not even from a consequential standpoint, but just from a rudimentary, almost animalistic standpoint. First off, I do not think that the repulsion that most people have towards gays is some socially learned behavior. I think this is actually a deeply evolved behavior.
Definitely.
And so the fact that, and again, I'm 40 years old now. Yes, as some are pointing out in this room, white women now love their gay friends. We could actually go into that. But the libertarians in this room. But the revulsion is not just some social convention. It is deeply evolved. And also just the asymmetry between heterosexual and homosexual relations is also deeply evolved. So let's take the first one first. Whenever I was young, I'm 40 years old, so we used to call whenever something was weird or gross or even lame or weak, it was gay. It was like gay,
Fucking gay.
Yeah, that's what, like.
And that continued until like 5 years ago. When
Yeah,
you
No, that
it's-
continued
it's
into our. I mean,
and
we,
it kinda-
as
it's
millennials,
still-
everything is gay.
had
it,
that.
it still continues now.
I mean,
and
we
that's,
say it.
and that's what it means. I remember seeing there were like comedic routines where straight comedians, just because comedians by their very nature they're outlandish, they would like pretend to be gay or start kissing each other. You would laugh and have a little bit of a kind of gross out reflex, but you just, oh, this is so comical. Two men acting like a man and a woman on a romantic
Right.
date. It's hilarious.
Right, it
Like,
is
or
pretty
it's-
funny.
It's why drag is funny.
Yeah, cross-dressing was
Yeah.
originally like
Which-
something soldiers would do, like around a
Exactly.
fire to make fun of each other.
Exactly. Now you can't do it because
No, yeah,
you're insulting
it's-
an identity.
And you know,
But-
and you see this actually if you go to Russia or you hang out with Russians, they still do this, and it's not considered weird. Like some guy will dress up as a woman, everybody will be like, "Ha ha ha,
it
lol,
shouldn't
bro."
be weird.
It's just funny. It's
It's-
like everybody gets drunk and they
Exactly.
start cross-dressing, like
Exactly.
whatever. It's
an
funny.
expression. It's healthy because it's actually, and it's not gay in both figuratively or literally, because it's you're actually reinforcing.
parodic. Yeah, you're parodying
You're
it, yeah.
reinforcing norms
Yeah,
by
right.
doing
and
that.
actually,
So
this leads to an interesting place.
okay.
It's the homosexuality being normalized makes it very difficult for normal male bonding to occur.
Right.
So normal male bonding includes a high level of what we might call homoeroticism.
Right.
And so for the kids out there, that means if you haven't played football or anything similar, been in the military, anything like that, where there's extreme levels of this, guys like to make gay jokes. Not gay jokes. You play this game called Gay Chicken, I guess is what I call it, where like you try to one up each other in like how much you like each other, and whoever bails first is gay because he's afraid of whatever. It doesn't.
Because
It's
he's a
totally illogical,
faggot.
but
he's ironically gay because he's not willing to be gay.
Right.
right. He's not
Yeah.
willing to make out with you, so he's a fag.
Fag.
I see. Yeah.
But like
no,
stuff
like-
like but stuff like this.
Okay,
Once you have, but
all
once
right,
you-
so that's it, folks. I'm gonna leave this podcast. Slowly back out of the room.
but once you introduce gays into the environment,
Right.
then it's fucked up because he's not kidding.
Right. Right.
He actually wants
Greg
to make
keeps
out
pushing,
with me.
and he's like, "Shit, I don't want to lose this, but he's for real."
Yeah. Well, and then also, like, to go back to what we were talking about before. I mean, there is this dynamic, and we've talked about this on our podcast on incels and the sexual revolution from a couple weeks ago with Mike Enoch, but the
Wherein I learned
masculine-
about the Aryan angle.
Yes, the masculine sexual dynamic is positive and aggressive, and the female sexual dynamic is negative or receptive. So men chase after women. Men have a l'objet désir, and women are the object of desire. And so women want to be wanted while men are wanting. Women are the direct object, men are the verb. I could
or
go
the subject.
on the subject and the verb. I
Well,
guess,
the
yes.
verb would be fuck, but like the
Well,
other,
but men are in a way desire. Like they're a subject that becomes directed and dynamic as a verb, but the female is the passive receptacle. Let's not get too autistic
This is
on this.
why.
I
This
could
is
go on
why.
this
Well, yeah,
all-
we could. What if it was an ergative language, Richard? What would you do then?
This
Stop.
is why tit pics will get a guy in his car to go to a girl's house, but a dick pic does nothing.
Exactly. And I actually talked about this. Women don't even want dick pics. Women laugh at dick pics. It's not a man who sends a woman a dick pic is not only stupid, he doesn't understand human nature.
Yeah, dicks are
in the
funny and
sense of
gross.
a woman, that's presuming that a woman acts like a man. and that women are like, oh yeah, I want to get me a dick tonight. Okay, sure, you can find a couple of women like that.
Well,
maybe
you can find some Jewish sitcoms that will
maybe in their
suggest that.
cruder moments, a woman might talk like that. But generally speaking, that's not female sexuality. Females want to be wanted. They want to be the object of desire. They don't lust after things in the way that men do.
Handbags.
Right. And so again, with male homosexuality, there are no breaks. I mean, there isn't that dynamic of having to chase after someone. And it is interesting that that homosexuals seem to take on heterosexual roles. And so there's the top and the bottom. There's the butch lesbian, lipstick lesbian. They seem to kind of take on a parodic heterosexual role, but nevertheless, they're still trapped in that like false dynamic where you have two men who want to get off. There's no mediation. There's no chase really. It's like two hunters trying to kill each other. It's a false dynamic, and so there are no brakes to this car. If you are a homosexual man, you can get laid in a matter of minutes. Whereas if you are a heterosexual man, even if you're charming and good looking or wealthy, it's actually kind of difficult.
But enough about me. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail.
Yeah.
I thought you
Please
just talked
stop
over that.
swiping left on my photos, girls. I'm really nice. I'll send you money. What was that guy? There was a Tinder. There was something that I think like Roosh tweeted this out or whatever. It was like,
oh God.
Well, there was like a girl's Tinder profile said, I just got a speeding ticket. Please send me $150, like Australian. And then some guy from Alabama just did it. Like,
What?
like he'll
That's so
never
pathetic.
meet her. He'll never see her.
Oh my God.
But he's still, it's anyway.
So yeah, hyper realistic white knighting.
Exactly. But it expresses something real about the dynamics. How many women are going to send that to a man? Like,
I mean, it's pretty
zero.
ballsy if you put that on your Tinder profile as a dude, like, just got arrested, send money, please.
Right. You'll get maybe some old like matrons to do that. Maybe if you're
Sugar
a
mama?
cute young guy. Yeah, perhaps. But generally speaking, it's not going to work.
right.
So I mean, that's the dynamic, and that obviously I mean, that's one of the reasons. I don't think it's the only reason that you have these rather shocking levels of STDs, of dysfunction, and so on. And even if we get at that, like what I was saying, that evolved revulsion towards homosexuality, like it's at best funny if you see two men kissing. It's at worst pretty gross. When you think about the homosexual sex acts themselves, it's pretty gross. But also it
Yeah, it's this weird parody of sex.
it is, but also it is not really healthy in itself. I mean, yes, it is true that heterosexuals will indulge in anal sex. That is happening. It might very well be happening more and more due to porn.
because of the normalization of other behaviors.
Yeah, exactly. As Andrew Joyce actually said in his article, as societies tolerate homosexuals, they become more homosexual. There's no, I don't doubt about it. But of course, sodomy has been around, needless to say, for a long time. It's not anything new. But
I thought it was invented in the 1920s.
No, but it's something that it's something that is inherently just
Gross and funny.
problematic. Yeah, I mean it's inherently problematic. I mean the vagina is self-lubricating. It is flexible. It has a lot of soft tissue. It is made for this. It's made to give birth. It's made to be fucked, and so on. The anus simply is not. If you engage in that kind of behavior on a regular basis, you're going to run into problems.
What was that article that came out a few months ago about? It was a tell-all by San Francisco, I guess, former gay. He was one of these gays who becomes a Christian, and he talked in excruciating detail about the hygienic practices that the catcher has to go through in order to carry on with this sort of lifestyle.
Right. It just is what it is. They're just inherent problems to this.
And societies that are not, even quote unquote traditional societies that pride themselves on being traditional but are deeply flawed. Several Muslim majority societies, whether Arab or not, sometimes even Afghan, have this problem as well. Where,
the bachabazi
little
problem.
boys, the bachabazi problem, and then women, in order to get to marriage, virgins opting for the other whole. It causes a whole bunch of problems in their societies as well. Women doing that so often that men end up deciding that women are for marriage but boys are for fun. That's actually a saying.
Yeah,
And,
boy love Thursdays. New York Times reported on it about a year ago. It's a common practice in the Afghan National Army and police force to, gather around the campfire Thursday evening and invite the bachabazi boy who's like 10 or 12. He puts on some rouge and then dances around and acts all feminine, and then the commander gets to bone him.
Paid for by our tax dollars.
It's pretty terrifying,
and Americans have to work with these people. And actually, this was in the Times story. This American captain he was a special forces guy, and the Afghan he was paired with had a boy chained to his bed, and the
totally
captain
normal.
and his first sergeant went and just beat the shit out of this guy one day, and then they got kicked out of the army because you can't you gotta respect their culture.
Cultural sensitivity.
It's insane, and also, I mean, the connection between you could say pedophilia, I guess pederasty is more common, and homosexuality is unfortunately very strong.
They're not really even different.
Yeah, I mean, the correlation
is
they're definitionally different. You're right, but the correlation is so strong that if there was a Venn diagram between the three words that Richard just cited, they would be almost nearly perfectly aligned. It's they all lead to each other basically.
Yes,
pederasty, pedophilia, and homosexuality.
Yeah, and it is all of these things are, the object of desire is wrong. It's I've always found it amusing when I've heard of men who have foot fetishes or something. I've never understood all the kinky stuff I could imagine. I could a lot of it is kind of okay, I get why people are in that foot fetish. What are you even talking about?
Do you also do you buy shoes?
Richard, we lost
do you
half our
have an
audience.
elbow fetish or something? It just makes no sense. I guess it's probably masochistic at some level, but anyway, it's an incorrect object of desire, and so with obviously with homosexuality, with heterosexuality, even if you are not engaged in reproduction, you are engaged in and again, obviously most sex that occurs throughout world history has not led to a child. We do it for recreation. We do it for spoils of war. We do it for power. We do it for all sorts of different reasons. But yeah, that being said, it's still a simulation of the most basic meaning of existence, which is to reproduce yourself. Mm-hmm. When you have this incorrect object of desire, it does seem to inherently lead to these kinds of perversities.
Yeah,
why wouldn't you take it to the next level of degeneracy or subversion?
Yeah.
And just go there and take it to the level of destroying a child or destroying a child's innocence.
One of my favorite, he's kind of controversial in France because he makes these weird third positionist arguments that makes him both anathema to the far right and the far left. But one of my favorite French commentators on social issues, Alain Soral, for whoever is francophone listening to this, he, kind of half jokingly, but more than half seriously, called this gay guy online enculé, which means the literal translation is the butt fucked, but it figuratively just means asshole, you piece of shit. And he got brought to court for it, and his defense was brilliant. He was like, no, I mean, if you are basing your entire identity around an orifice in the body which doesn't have either the honorability of being the place where birth occurs, for example, you mentioned the vagina, or even blowjobs are more honorable because the mouth is where the thought become word, the logos comes out of. There's so many other other interesting orifices that have more validity. But he's like, this guy literally
You, for
defines
instance,
himself.
prefer sex in the nasal cavity.
Of course,
Yes.
smell is a very
Yes,
French.
it's why the
as,
French-
as a lover of French cuisine,
the French
And,
cheese.
the presence of nasal vowels in French is sexualized in this act.
but of course. But we digress. No, so and what was brilliant about his expose, he was defending himself, but he was also trying to get laughs from the jury. And the thing is, he's right by saying like these people define themselves through and by an asshole, and that actually speaks metaphysically to who they are. Like they are crap because that's what they worship. It's actually pretty pathetic.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Richard, what were you saying just before that? Just the
About-
last point you made?